Hello everyone. This video will speak about hypothesis. Introduction. What is hypothesis? Hypothesis defines a relationship between two variables and is capable of empirical testing. This section takes a look at how the hypothesis should be stated and provides examples of various kinds of hypotheses. A good hypothesis is worded in very simple, clear and concise language and provides definition of the variable in concrete operational terms. These two requirements may be in a conflict if the operational definition needs extensive explanation, in which case the variable should be operationally defined separately. The hypothesis should be, however, be specific enough so that the reader understands what the variables are and whom the researcher will be studying. A hypothesis denotes a conjecture or proposition about the solution to the problem, the relationship of two or more variables, or the nature of some phenomenon. Sources of hypothesis. Hypotheses in research studies cannot be developed merely with wild guesses or assumptions, but they are generated from a variety of sources such as theoretical or conceptual frameworks, previous research studies, real-life experiences, and academic literatures. First, we have theoretical framework. What is theoretical framework? The most important sources of hypothesis are theoretical or conceptual frameworks developed for the study. Through the deductive approach, these hypotheses are drawn from the theoretical or conceptual frameworks for testing them. For example, Roy's adaptation model is used in a research study where a hypothesis can be drawn from a concept of the theoretical model that patients' adaptation to a chronic illness depends on the availability of social support on them. Other sources of hypothesis, we have previous research, that is findings of the previous studies may be used for framing the hypothesis for another study. In addition, we have real life experiences. Real life experience also contribute in the formulation of hypothesis for research studies. And we have academic literature. Academic literature is mainly based on formal theories, empirical evidences, experiences, observation and conceptualization of academicians. This may serve as a good source for formulating hypotheses for the research studies. Characteristics of good hypothesis. A good hypothesis should have the following characteristics, that is, be simple and clear, be able to provide a definition of the variables, be able to show the relationship between two or more variables, be specific enough and able to test in a meaningful manner. Types and forms of hypothesis. There are many types of hypothesis. Here we have simple hypothesis, complex hypothesis, associative hypothesis, causal hypothesis, directional hypothesis, non-directional hypothesis, null hypothesis, and research hypothesis. What is simple hypothesis? Simple hypothesis means it is a statement that reflects the relationship between two variables, whereas in complex hypothesis, it is a statement that reflects the relationship between more than two variables. We have associative hypothesis. Associative hypothesis reflects a relationship between variables that occur or exist in a natural setting without manipulation. And we have causal hypothesis. Causal hypothesis generally predicts the cause and effect relationship between the two or more dependent and independent variable in experimental or interventional studies, where the independent variable is manipulated by a researcher to examine the effect on the dependent variable. Directional hypothesis. Directional hypothesis specifies not only the existence but also the expected direction of the relationship between the variables. Here to express the direction, the directional terms such as positive, negative, less, more, lower, higher, lesser, greater are also used. Whereas non-directional hypothesis, it reflects only the relationship between two or more variables, but it does not specify the anticipated direction and nature of relationship such as positive or negative. Null hypothesis. Null hypothesis is also known as statistical hypothesis, and it is mainly used for testing statistics and interpretation of statistical outcome. It mainly states that there exists no relationship between the dependent and independent variables, whereas in research hypothesis it states the existence of relationship between the two or more variables. Formulation of research hypothesis. When the researcher starts the formulation of a research hypothesis with a research question and then generate the operational definition for all the variables. When the researcher formulates the research hypothesis is need to keep in the mind of the following, that is expected relationship or differences of variable operational definitions. Tips on developing research problems and hypotheses. There are some few tips on developing research problems and hypotheses for those planning to conduct a study. First, watch for the recurring problems and see if you can discern a pattern in the situation that led to a problem. For example, why do many patients complain of being tired after being transferred from a coronary care unit to a progressive care unit? Think about the aspect of your work that is exam, frustrating or do not result in the intended outcome. Then try to identify the factors contributing to the problem that could be changed. For example, why is supper time is so frustrating in a nursing home? If you formulate a hypothesis, avoid stating them in null form. When statistical tests are performed, underlying null hypothesis is usually assumed without being explicitly stated. In designing a study of your own, do not be afraid to make a prediction. That is, to state the hypothesis. Being wrong is part of the learning process. If needed, do not hesitate to replicate a study that is reported in the research literature. Replications are always provide a valuable learning experiences and have the potential to make valuable contributions because they can corroborate earlier findings. If you are wording your problem statement as a statement of purpose, be careful in your choice of verbs because the verbs communicate information about the nature of your research design and possibly about your level of expertise. Among the verb choices are the following: describe, explore, examine, investigate, address, understand, compare, evaluate, testing, assess, explain and predict.